Way back in the summer of 2022, I entered a challenge so noble, so prestigious, that God himself literally is... yeah. Is this really how I want to start this video? Nope. Welcome to my second, third, Zero to Hero challenge. Quick history lesson. The first time around, I did this challenge as Protection Warrior. While it was a spec I never played, it was a role I was quite intimately familiar with. Tanking. After I successfully completed that challenge, I took a little time off in Shadowlands Season 4 where I mostly focused on pushing keys on my main. At the start of Dragonflight, I admittedly teased a return of this challenge, though life got busy and it got the best of me. It's a lot of work editing these videos, okay? While I didn't publicly show the challenge, I did complete it on my sub-rogue, a spec and class I never really played before. Maybe I'll get around to piecing something together in the future for that challenge, but I did end up climbing up to 2500 IO and I even got all of my portals, so yeah, pretty rad. Let's fucking go, dude. Dude, that was so... Holy shit. Now that I have done the challenge as tank and as melee DPS, I think I hate myself enough to try this challenge from the healing role, featuring a spec that I've never played before, the Holy Paladin. I don't really care if something is meta or not. This challenge is super fun and I like playing new specs or classes to see if I can play them, and alright, I must admit, this is actually somewhat of an excuse to gear my Paladin for tanking, but nonetheless, I'm going to be aiming to hit 2500 IO as Holy before even speccing into the protection specialization. So, let's set up the rules. The challenge is not just getting Keystone Master, but Keystone Hero, which is 2500 IO. This is roughly 18s and 19s across the board with a few sprinkled in 20s. A little bonus objective though, obtain all 8 portals. Two major rules for this challenge. First, everything must be pugged. Second, no outside help from friends, guildies, or even my own alts. This is in terms of gear, gold, or key runs, though I may ask some Holy Paladin mains for some advice. Alright, with the pleasantries out of the way, Potato Ham was born. Gearing this season is insanely overpowered and honestly is a big reason why I'm super motivated to actually start this challenge. I like to have a plan when it comes to gearing an alt, and this is exactly how I would recommend gearing a new character if you were in this situation. Fresh level 70. In this case, I have left myself 20k gold to work with. Now, this character isn't fresh. I've played Paladin super casually last season, and I ended up getting my 4-piece from Vault of the Incarnates, but that's not really fair, is it? I'm actually going to sell all of this gear and act like it's a fresh character. Like I was saying, with less than 1000 gold, you can grab a full set of 376 itemable gear. If you somehow don't have enough gold, get a life. With that out of the way, let's begin our adventure. While this gear is only 376, we can easily get upgraded with the new currency system. Before jumping into keys, let's head to Zerla Caverns and we can start that questline atop the main spire in Valdrakken. Doing this entry quest does a great job at introducing players to the new currency system, and you'll get a nice little start on your flight stones and spark fragments for crafting. Though I don't recommend doing this as an undergeared healer, just go DPS spec. Before finishing the last quest, we need to make sure that we pick up our Spark quest line. This will allow us to easily craft some 424 gear that will eventually be upgraded to 447 when the time comes. You know you're about to complete the chapter when you have to talk to Honeypelt before entering Loam. At that point, we're going to enter Loam really quick, pick up our quest, and then head back to finish the quest line. With the first chapter complete, let's head over to the world boss. While the gear isn't phenomenal in any regard, any world boss loot will be vastly superior than our 376 green gear. Sadly, we got squat diddly. Before we dive into some keys, let us use some of our flight stones to upgrade our gear and finalize some macros and keybinds. Since we have a main who is already geared, we are going to be getting a discount on upgrades. I think it's about a 40% discount or something like that, but I'm not really sure. I just know it's cheaper. Last but not least, weak aura time. I'm not going to spend as long on this as I have in the past. I'm pretty much just going to copy a template that I use for most of my other characters like my mage, my rogue, my arms warrior, etc. It's a style that I'm used to and it tracks everything that I need to know. We're going to add some important things like tracking judgment and holy shock, along with some of our major and minor cooldowns like wings, aura mastery, and of course our blessings. With this setup, the only thing left to do is start chasing some keys. And how bad can it be? Very, very bad. I started with a Neltharian's Lair +2. And let me preface this with, I have actually no idea how to play this spec. I grabbed some talent build from Subcreation and I just dove in, so I apologize in advance. I'm not unfamiliar with healing, but the melee healer playstyle is something that I'm really going to need to get used to. First, I am using a two-handed polearm, which means that I can't spend holy power on damage with Shield of the Righteous. Also, with no prior research, I figured the best way to do group healing is through Light of Dawn. Turns out, that ain't it. That'll be a future me problem though. After Rockmora died, I was surprised that the DK only did 400k total damage while alive. After quickly peeping at his health, I noticed his item level was super low, like 304 low. Like I said 3 minutes ago, the auction house is a great way to get really easy catch-up gear, or just do the Zerlak Cavern questline. Spoiler, this won't be the only death. Some trial by fire is always the best way to learn a class, and Neuraxis was that fire. I knew this fight would have some pretty intense damage checks, especially with a 304 DK in the group, but I didn't expect us not to kill ads at all. If Neuraxis eats a player or an ad, she gains 50% more damage, stacking, and permanently. Not only did she eat an ad, but then ate our tank. Not good. Luckily, I was able to recover by utilizing wings, but something that's really annoying on this fight is line of sight. There were a lot of times I was trying to heal with Word of Glory and it was just saying no line of sight. I didn't even know that this was an issue on this fight, so I apologize to every healer ever. Oh, wait, never mind. Watching this footage back, this DK giga line of sighted behind this boulder. Jesus Christ. Shortly after we defeated Neuraxis, this DK was clearly new at the game and ended up pulling the boss after activating Pillars of Frost. It went, well, exactly how you would imagine. I tried saving the pull, but we destroyed the first pillar, so rip. The tank told us as a group not to pull for him, and just like high school, I was that little tattletale. I called up the DK and he apologized but said he didn't know, so I explained how. After a quick run back, we had a slightly better execution. A lot of damage on this fight comes from whenever the boss moves or the ad moves. Outside of that, there's going to be moderate damage from the magma pools targeting random players. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was my first timed key. No loot, but with the Spark Ketchup system, we got a fragment which puts us a little closer to a 424 crafted item. We also picked up a little +2 freehold. Easy enough, right? I quickly listed the key and we got underway. I grabbed the first few people who queued up, and somehow we got this massive hunter to tag along. And I'm not really going to pass on that opportunity to get carried from a stranger, like a free Uber ride. In the first key, I wasn't happy with my healing breakdown, and I wanted to try a different build. This time around, I actually picked up Avenging Crusader, which turns my damage into healing, which I think might feel a little better. It's a much shorter CD, which is pretty cool. The only difference is that it requires 5 holy power to use. There aren't a lot of fights that are that explosive at the start where it'll be a problem, so we're gonna shoot our shot. Obviously, having a hunter who is geared is going to make this run super easy, so nothing really impactful happened during this run. I just wanted to note that on the first boss, I tried my best to bait the bird poo to start prepping in higher keys. We want to keep melee cleared for our, tank, I guess? In most keys, you might have a melee or two, and keeping the melee area clear will allow your DPS to have higher uptime for more damage. Typically, you'll have a ranged DPS do this, but if you have a full melee stacked comp, it might default to your healer. I know I'm undergeared, but I find that mana efficiency is really, well, bad. It's a +2, but I'm feeling like I'm always going Honestly, I think I might need to just relax on the Holy Shock usage when it's not needed, and I should focus more on mana neutral abilities like Judgment and Crusader Strike along with the Word of Glory. But again, that's probably going to be a future me problem. 13 minutes later, gained 67 IO and no loot. Perfect. Alright, we still have that spark, so I think it's time to make our first craft. I think I'm going to go with Laureate. Why, you might ask? I'm not sure. I took a look at Subcreation, and it's actually a fairly popular embellishment piece, especially since we get to choose the sets that are on it. Bada bing, bada boom. We also get to add some sockets to it as well. After digging through sites like Subcreation and Murloc.io, it seems that most of our top paladins are focusing on a haste verse-centric build, followed by crit. The only stat that doesn't really make sense is Mastery, which is pretty clear if you read it. With Laureate made, let's list our Neltharis key that we got from timing that freehold. And this took a surprisingly long time to fill. I'm not sure why, but 15 minutes later we finally got squatted up. Welcome to YouTube, boys and girls. Oh, and I completely forgot about the weekly quest to do dungeons. That makes sense why that hunter was in our last key. This will be actually a great goal for this episode, I guess. Outside of bosses, this dungeon doesn't really have a ton of painful trash, and most of the damage can actually be avoided or stopped. On Magma Tusk, we want to make sure that we're setting up for each mutation. That would be pretty easy since we have Beacon of Virtue and Avenging Crusader. Many of the bosses in this instance are the same. Breaking Chains on Chargath, Might of the Forge and Blazing Aegis on Forge Master Gorak, and Magma Shield on Warlord Sarga. A big part about the healing is recognizing damage patterns and preparing to counter them. I can't wait to be blamed for fucking that up later on. After timing this key, we walked away with a finger belt and a nice +7 Uldaman key. We might put that on the back burner for now. We need to get 3 more keys done to complete our weekly quest. For those who don't know, every few weeks, players can pick up a quest that'll give them 1 piece of heroic raid loot after completing 4 mythic dungeons. While this can't be tier, it can be any item from your loot spec, including armor, weapons, and more importantly, trinkets. Also, due to the new upgrade system, we will be able to eventually upgrade this all the way to 441 item level, once we begin farming worm and aspect crests. Anyways, we want to upgrade a new item before heading into the next dungeon. We decided to queue up for another Neltharis, and similarly, this run was quite clean, which would be expected since it was only a +2. I've been playing around with a few different talents. It's quite popular for Holy Paladins to play with a talent and ability called Blessing of Summer, but I noticed I just kept forgetting to hit it. I think I'm going to drop this until later on when I get a little bit more comfortable with the general playstyle. I also swapped to Holy Prism instead of AoE Light's Hammer. I like the shorter cooldown, and I like that tanks can't kite out of it. After this 0 death run, I looted another spark fragment, which gets me my 2nd spark, and that means I can finally get a one-handed weapon. This is big since I haven't been able to spend holy power for damage like I said earlier, so I think that's going to be the first thing I'm going to do. I don't really want to spend all day finding a crafter though, so I listed this as a public order which got completed quite quickly. Downside of this, it's only a few item levels lower than the 424 benchmark, but it's better than nothing. And again, once I recraft this, it's not really going to matter. I quickly bought a cheap shield to go along with the sword, and I upgraded a few times with flight stones. Now, I'm pretty dumb and I forgot to record my next key, but it was an Uldaman key, and holy shit. The tank was really rough to heal. It was a 330 Guardian Druid who didn't really like hitting Frenzied Regeneration. I can't stress this enough. It costs less than 1,000 gold to get 370 item level gear. Leveling from 60 to 70 alone should net you at least 6k gold, if not more depending on how you level. I typically do questing and professions and sometimes will end up with much more. Also, there's a little secret feather near Algothar Academy that vendors for over 2,000 gold, so you're welcome. Stop being undergeared. With 1 key left for the weekly, let's go slam it out really quick. We actually got into a Brackenhide +5. While it is a low key, I've seen this key get bricked at all levels due to the first boss, so I was a little nervous. The big wall in this dungeon is the first boss, mostly the Gash Frenzy, though there's a lot going on in this fight. It's the healer's job to top everyone to remove the bleed, and it's also on the DPS to avoid getting hit by frontals or blade storms and even kick bolts and use their defensives. Luckily, as a Holy Paladin, I can do whatever Protection Paladins can do, which is Bubble, Hand of Sacrifice, and Blessing of Protection, which are just all great counters to this effect. Even Lay on Hands is goated. We ended up losing our Magician to, strafing with the frontal. That's okay. The tank needs to make sure that they're soaking the charge, but moving around makes that quite difficult. If you have the arrow on you, just stand still. Outside of that, it was a pretty standard Brackenhide run up until Treemouth. Most Pogues I run with still do not understand how to skip, and nothing has changed in this run. After defeating Stink Breath, most tanks like to skip up and around to the right hand side of the path, and skip most of the mobs between Treemouth and Gutshot. But the thing is, there are 2 stealth mobs on the left side of the path. If you pull them, they're going to wipe you, because by the time you get in combat, they're going to be on you and your group is split. So when doing the skip, do everything in your power to hug the right hand side, just like that. And you'll impress your parents for once. At the end of the key, we were super short on percent, but that's a-okay. We backpulled some mobs and finished the key with a healthy 9 minutes remaining. We now have 377 score and feeling pretty accomplished. Not only that, but we looted a super thick Haste Verse belt. This would be arguably one of our best in slot with stats, but even without, it's a pretty massive upgrade over our World Quest gear. And we're gonna honestly gladly take it. Before that Brackenhide key started, we were 393 item level, but we're about to make a pretty massive leap. First, we put on the belt, which brought us up to 395. Then we took it over to the vendor to get it upgraded with some flight zones that we've accumulated over the last few keys. Next, we made our third spark, which is pretty good because it's going to get our fourth piece of 424 gear. While I currently am wearing one embellishment with the Elemental Laureate necklace, players are allowed to wear two. There are a few great options, but I think the one that I'm set on is going to be the Undulating Spore Cloak. This item was actually introduced this patch in 10.1, and has been the choice for most healing specs. The effect heals you while you're above 70% health, and if you drop below 30% health, you're going to gain a pretty sizable absorb shield. Perfect for those scary situations. I'm going to check out the auction house shortly and see if I can afford it. My main concern with affording this cloak was mostly the Zerala glow spores, which would devour my ever-shrinking wallet. But the prices have actually dropped significantly since the last time I looked at these a few weeks ago. Let's get this item listed, and hopefully someone will craft it. I provided all the mats and a 1k gold tip, like a normal fucking human. Okay, now the moment that we've all been waiting for. The weekly quest for a heroic piece. Regardless, this will be a pretty sizable upgrade. There are some pretty insane items that do come from the raid, and with the inspiration catalyst opening up this next upcoming Tuesday, we're going to have our options at tier if we get a main slot piece or a chance to reroll our stats on minor pieces. Earlier today, while looking through Murloc.io, I noticed that the gear is pretty flexible, and I'm sure will only become more so once we gain access to more sparks, but the biggest thing I noticed is that all the top trinkets players are running are from the raid, so I'm really praying that I get some of the trinkets, but like your common gaming pessimist, I was doubtful, and I didn't want to get my hopes up. Luckily at this time though, I was in a Discord call with my boy Zach, and he told me just to pray. Thank God I listened to him, and I guess I'll just play my reaction.
Oh my God, here it is. Let me see it.
There's no shot. It's gonna be something really bad, like a fucking necklace.
Say a prayer. You gotta fucking believe it's gonna be good.
Dear Jesus, please bestow your faith onto me and give me a Rashok trinket.
Oh my fucking God!
Oh, it's fucking here. Holy shit.
Bro. Yup. Yeah, that happened. I don't know if any of you ever feel like this, but my main always has the worst luck, but whenever I'm gearing up a trap alt, I either get blessed with all of the gear I need, or I have insane luck with tertiary stats like avoidance, leech, sockets, etc. Anyways, we're now chilling at 402 item level, and we've gone up 9 item levels within minutes. Pretty nuts. I felt like I was on a runner's high, arguably a BIS belt, into a Spore Cloak craft, into a Rashok trinket. I was ready to continue blasting some keys, but I wanted to see if I can sneak my way into LFR and snag some tier. The new raid is actually really easy compared to previous tiers, so there's like little chance we're gonna wipe. Never mind. Looking for raid hasn't changed. Let me quickly walk you through my experience. First, I recently downloaded the Liquid Weak Aura package and forgot to even look at Magmarak, so I spent the whole fight staring at this monstrosity. Then someone tried to reset Neltharion and quickly realized that Night Elf Shadow Meld isn't the play. And it really took a long time to reset him. When we finally did pull him, we lost 3 people to the #1 rule of World of Warcraft raiding. Don't stand in fire, and it was honestly just downhill from there. Luckily, we still didn't wipe, but I got absolutely shafted on rolls. With the harder bosses out of the way, how much worse can it get? I guess everyone will soak if you keep the boss on the door and spin the frontal. Rashok is easy enough, right? Right? Well, that was fun. I quickly glanced at Zakarn's loot table and realized there is nothing worth chasing. Maybe I'll give Sarkarath a shot when LFR comes out in the next week or two, but I just bounced super quick. But I was really happy with my progress so far. At this point, we have 3 crafted items, Sword, Laureate, and Spore Cloak. We've also been able to snag pretty decent haste verse belt along with Juicy Rashok's Molten Heart Trinket. My plan is to get some more keys done this week before the reset and then hopefully start working on obtaining my tier set. Stay tuned, where next time I learn how to